Carlos Correa is officially off the board, heading to the San Francisco Giants, leaving Dansby Swanson as the biggest remaining shortstop available on the free agent market, and really one of the biggest bats left available on the free agent market. Is now the time for the Atlanta Braves to up their offer to the shortstop and get serious about bringing him back. We'll talk about the latest offer from the Braves, where the two sides are, and if that difference is going to be enough for Dansby Swanson to go elsewhere. We'll also talk about Vaughn Grissom and his role in this. Do the Braves really feel comfortable about him being the shortstop of the future? We'll get into all of that on the Braves shortstop position and what it looks like now and going forward on today's episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I am your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on Twitter at shortstopball. Also, make sure you follow the podcast on Twitter at LockedOn_Braves. Send in any questions, comments, or feedback that you have for the podcast. Always love hearing from you, and I try to make this as interactive as a show as possible. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube. If you're new, hit that thumbs up button and that notification bell as well to help support the show. Thanks for making Locked On Braves your first listen of each and every day. I did want to let you know today's the last week of daily podcast during the off season. After this, we'll go to 3 days a week unless something major happens. And honestly, until this Dansby situation is settled, probably going to continue to put out content every day. But just wanted to give you a heads up in case you're not seeing things daily from me after this week. And, with the holidays coming up and everything, hopefully you understand. But again, appreciate you being here and listening to Locked On Braves. On today's podcast, we're going to talk about Dansby Swanson, something we talked about often this offseason, but I want to focus on the Braves offer, where it currently stands, where they need to get to, how close does it need to be in order to convince Dansby to stay? And with the deals we've seen this offseason, just how much could Dansby actually get? And if the writing is on the wall, which it's starting to feel that way, that Dansby won't be coming back, what are the Braves' options now? Because there's obviously not anything left out there free agency-wise that would be a huge impact, and there doesn't really appear to be anything out there on the trade market either. So Braves have really, they put up this front that Vaughn Grissom, is ready and he's working and they feel like he can handle it. Is that just lip service, or do they actually believe that? But let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. And if you're watching live, let me know your comments in the chat as well. I know Joseph Recap says 6,150. That's $25 million a year. That's big dollars right there, but I think that would probably get it done if the Braves were to offer that. E Baldera 89 says, I'm sorry to say, but I think Dansby is as good as gone. But let's talk about the Braves' latest offer. And Mark Bowman of MLB.com mentioned this in a piece that he wrote last week. And this was an offer, I believe, at the end of the season, maybe even during the season. But from Mark Bowman's perspective, this is the last offer the Braves made to Dansby, and it was for 6 years and around $100 million. Now, between 16 and 17 million a year is what Bowman said. Now that we've seen the way the offseason has played out and what Trey Turner has got, Xander Bogaerts has got, and Carlos Correa has got, and really what a lot of free agents have gotten. Look at what Taijuan Walker got from the Phillies. You have seen a lot of teams overspending. And you got to figure the market that Dansby has, that teams are going to be willing to overspend on him as well. Now, that 16, 17 million a year range, I think that's fair for Dansby Swanson. And that's what I've said from the very beginning of this offseason. I thought going into last year, maybe you could get him for 12 to 15 million a year. But with the season that he had, a Gold Glove defender, I can't see him really signing for less than $18 million a year. And I think that is a fair amount for what he brings to the team, even just defensively, even if he takes a step back offensively, which I think he probably will. What he brings you on the defensive side, his leadership, to me, that's worth $18 million a year. You go over that, that's where I get a little uncomfortable. So what the Braves are offering, I think is fair based on his entire career. Now, if you're paying him on what he did in 2022 alone, then yeah, maybe he's a $23 to $25 million a year player. I don't believe he's that. I don't believe he's a 6-WAR player. I think he's more of a 3 to 4-WAR player going forward. And it's just still a really good player. I want Dansby Swanson. I like Dansby Swanson. But what this market is dictating is that he's going to get a lot more than that in free agency. So should the Braves up their offer, and how high should they go? Would 6 years at $20 million a year be enough? What if they offered him 6 years, $120 million, so $20 million a year, and had a 7th-year option with a $10 million buyout? So that's $130 million guaranteed. I don't think that's a terrible deal. I don't think that's a bad offer. Would that get it done? And I think that's where we're kind of at right now, and where Alex Anthopoulos is at, is that even if you make that deal, and that's more than I would be comfortable offering. Like I said, $18 million a year is about as high as I'd be willing to go on Dansby Swanson. But let's say you want to get it done and you up your offer and you go to $20 million a year over 6 years. And again, maybe you throw in a 7th option year with a high buyout. And let's just say you give them a guaranteed $130 million over 7 years. Is that enough? I don't even think that's enough to get Dansby Swanson from what we could see him get. Now, let's take a step back for a second. Dansby Swanson is not Carlos Correa. He is not Trey Turner. And he's not even Xander Bogaerts. And while he is very good and he's coming off his best season, I think most people understand that he is a tier below those three. I think people understand that, but still, there are a lot of teams out there that need Dansby Swanson. He's available, and they're going to overpay to get that. And I just think, Mark Bowman in his same chat that he had said that the industry mostly believes that Dansby Swanson is going to get at least $22 million a year. Now, that is the highest offer. So say a team, goes 6-7 years at $22 million a year, and the Braves are at, $20 million a year over that same time period. I think that gap is enough that Dansby could leave that money on the table and go to Atlanta. I think he would do that, but I don't think the Braves are that close. Again, the Braves would have to significantly up their offer. And we've seen a lot in these contracts this offseason too, the length of these deals really go up in order to spread out this money and lower the AAV. Does a team come out and offer Dansby, $18 million a year over 8 years for a total of $150 million in order to keep the AAV down, but they give him those extra years? That's what we've seen a lot of these teams do with these long contracts that, Turner, Correa, and Bogaerts all got. Do we see a team do that? And I don't think Alex Anthopoulos would be comfortable giving him those years. I almost think he'd rather have the high AAV and a shorter deal. But that's just the trend that we're seeing this offseason, is giving more years to lessen the AAV. So then the question becomes, how badly does he want to be in Atlanta? It's pretty apparent before the offseason began that he'd have to leave money on the table. I think just about everybody knows that, but how much is he willing to give up? Again, if the Braves are at $20 million a year and his highest offer from somebody else is $22 million a year over, obviously the same length, to me, that's enough for Dansby to come back. If he were to turn that down and go elsewhere, I'd be a little surprised. I wouldn't say hurt. He has the opportunity and the ability to go get as much as he wants. But where we're at right now with what Bowman's reported, and where Dansby Swanson is, where he sent a counteroffer for 6 years, $140 million, $23 million a year, That's a big gap. I mean, there's a $30 to $40 million difference between where the Braves are and where Dansby Swanson is, and likely where other teams are. Now, you can get mad all you want if you just want to say Dansby's taking the money. He doesn't really want to be in Atlanta. You leave 30 to 40 million on the table. You make that decision to leave 30 or 40 million dollars on the table. That's not that easy to do. And I get it. We're talking millions of dollars. How much do you really need? But I mean, that's setting up generations of families to do that. So again, I think it would have to be much closer than that. I think the Braves would have to be within 10, 15, maybe even 20 million, because I think Dansby wants to be in Atlanta that badly in order for him to turn down other deals. But just where the Braves are at now and where other teams are, and you look at the other teams involved, the Dodgers, the Cubs, the Red Sox, possibly even the Giants after signing Correa, and the Minnesota Twins are in there as well. Those are some, with the exception of Minnesota, those are some big market teams who still have a lot of money left to spend this offseason. So, and while the Braves are pretty much maxed out, they're already at their highest payroll ever. So that doesn't bode well for the Braves in trying to bring back Dansby Swanson. I think they're going to have to up that offer if they really want him. The question is, will they and should they? And that's what I want to hear from you in the comment section. Should the Braves up their offer? If they're at 6 years, $17 million a year, should they up it? How high up should they go? How high up would you be willing to go in order to get close enough to the other teams to convince Dansby to stay? Again, Dansby countered at 6 and 140. Again, that to me would be too high. I would feel comfortable at 18. I would go as high as 20 in order to get a deal done. You may have to go even higher than that. And then when is a decision coming? He just got married last Saturday. He's likely enjoying his honeymoon at the moment. But I'd have to think he wants to get this taken care of before Christmas. I got to think Alex Anthopoulos wants to get this taken care of so that he can move on to other things that he wants to do, because I got to think this is holding him up. Not that there's necessarily a ton of other moves he needs to make or deals he has to get done, but I'm sure he would like to know, and obviously we would like to know what is the decision? Where do the Braves need to go? So I got to think they try to get this taken care of before Christmas. I think a week from now, I think early next week, we probably have a decision on where Dansby Swanson's going to go. And I think if he's going to go to Atlanta, they're really going to have to be serious about going over what they're comfortable doing. Now, the only time Alex Anthopoulos has gone over what he was comfortable doing was Marcell Ozuna. So we don't want a repeat of that. I don't think Dansby is a repeat of that, but usually, Alex Anthopoulos, he draws his line in the sand. He's not going to go beyond that. Again, the only time he did was with Marcell Ozuna. So I don't know that he will, but if they want Dansby Swanson, they're almost certainly going to have to. And can the Braves afford to wait if the writing is on the wall? If you see that you're not getting close to what the other teams are going to offer Dansby Swanson, can you afford to wait? Do you need to act now? And that's what I want to talk about here next. BetOnline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game that you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sport wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Time does seem to be of the essence here. Now, there's several months, a couple of months left until spring training, until pitchers and catchers report. So there's time here. But again, I got to think all parties involved want to move on. And I got to think Alex Anthopoulos in particular wants to move on. And you look back at the Freddie Freeman situation last year, granted that was super sped up because of the lockout and just the short window that they had before the season began from when the lockout ended. But last year, once Alex Anthopoulos realized, okay, we're not getting anywhere with Freddie's agent, things aren't working out, They essentially gave Alex Anthopoulos an ultimatum. He quickly pivoted and went to Matt Olson. If he gets to that same scenario this offseason with Dansby and he realizes, okay, we're not making any progress, there's still a huge gap between us and Dansby, I know he's going to get more from another team, I need to pivot before I lose that leverage, because once Dansby signs, you lose that leverage in trades. Then a team knows your back's against the wall. You have to make this trade in order to fill this hole at shortstop. So again, just kind of like the Freddie Freeman situation last year, once Alex Anthopoulos saw the writing on the wall, he quickly pivoted. So maybe the fact that he hasn't gone to another move at shortstop maybe makes it, or leads us to believe that he thinks there's an opportunity there to bring Dansby back, or there just really aren't any other options out there. And I think that's a real possibility as well. Or they really believe in Vaughn Grissom. Now, I'm having a hard time believing that all of a sudden he's going from a guy that you take out of second base, not even shortstop, but you take him out of second base, one, because he wasn't hitting and he was struggling, but because Orlando Arcia was just that much better defensively at second base than Vaughn Grissom. And now all of a sudden, after working with Ron Washington a couple of weeks, and I love Ron Washington, and I think he can get him there, but not in 3 1-week sessions during an offseason. It's going to take him going into games and getting game reps with the things that he's learned from Ron Washington in order to make those strides defensively. Just in my honest opinion, I don't see him becoming somebody who's even an average defender at shortstop over 1 offseason session or 3 offseason sessions with Ron Washington. You need game reps and game practice in order to become that. So I'm not really buying the idea that Vaughn Grissom is ready to be your starting shortstop in 2023. And if that's not the case, and I'm not saying he can't be the future shortstop, I'm the one that's been saying all along, I'm not ready to give up on him defensively, but that would be a lot to ask, to hand him the shortstop job, a premium defensive position, just when, he's had a little bit of time to work with Ron Washington. You haven't really, what we've seen before doesn't lead you to believe that he can handle it defensively. I just personally feel like he needs to go back to AAA, play every day, get those game reps, and become that type of defensive player. Now, if you think he can be that down the road, then I think that's the best plan for Vaughn Grissom. And if that's the case, and you don't sign Dansby Swanson, what's left? And what's left is not much. I've been saying all along, based on people that I know from covering the Brewers that I talked to, that Willy Adames is not available. He is the biggest heart and soul of that team. They do not want to trade him unless they have to. Now, if they're out of it come the All-Star break, then I could see Willy Adames becoming available. But I don't think as the Braves, you can't count on that and wait on that. But he does not appear to be available right now. Ken Rosenthal's already reported that the White Sox are not planning to trade Tim Anderson. So that's your 2 impact shortstops that we thought might potentially be available in trade, and they're not available. And honestly, I don't know what the Braves would have to offer. I'm sure they could put together a package for either of those guys, especially Adames, to get them. But as we talked about yesterday, the farm system is getting really, really thin. So that means the trade options are very limited for impact players. If the Padres were willing to trade Ha-Seong Kim, that likely becomes the next best option. If Dansby doesn't sign, then Ha-Seong Kim, in my opinion, becomes the next best option if the Padres are willing to move him. And I think the plan for them right now is to put him at second base, but he could become a potential option. Now that the Padres have like 6 shortstops on their team, they could certainly part with Ha-Seong Kim if the Braves could offer them something to help them make them better now. Perhaps, an Ian Anderson. Maybe they think they can turn him around there. But that would probably be the next best option. Ahmed Rosario is somebody of the Guardians, is somebody that's been floated out there in trade rumors. I don't love the fit. He's not great defensively, and I think the bat is just okay. So I'm not all for Ahmed Rosario. Here's kind of an out-of-the-box idea. If you can't sign Dansby Swanson, if you're unsure about Vaughn Grissom being able to handle the position defensively, and there's nobody out there on the trade market that you think is going to be available to come in and have an immediate impact, perhaps you look for a prospect who is ready or close to being ready, but is blocked, by somebody else already on that team. I think that might be another route. It could be a lot more difficult because what are you giving up in a prospect trade? It had to be something where the Braves are trading from depth that they have, which is pitching at the prospect level, in order to get, a nice piece, because you're not just going to trade for any shortstop prospect. You want to trade for a good one, obviously, that's ready to step up on a championship contending team. So it could be a little bit more difficult, but that could be another route that the Braves go, to look to trade for a young prospect who can handle the shortstop position that just may be blocked, that maybe another team, has depth at, where they could part with a shortstop in order to upgrade an area that they don't have. I looked around. I honestly don't see many fits that stick out to me, but I trust Alex Anthopoulos and the scouts have much more advanced research than I do. Someone did somewhat jokingly mention Ronald Acuña's brother, Luis Acuña, who is in the Rangers system and is a shortstop. And he's, the Rangers obviously have Marcus Semien and Corey Seager up the middle for them. And I'm sure they could use some pitching, even though they just got DeGrom and Heaney and have John Gray. But, maybe that's somewhere they could go. I would love to have more than one Acuña, and it sounds like he has the ability to stick at shortstop and has a really good bat. But another name that really interested me when I was kind of looking around is Maikel Garcia of the Royals. And the Royals obviously have Bobby Witt Jr. at the shortstop position. Garcia, is ready. He even had a little cup of coffee with the Royals last year. Good contact, not much power, so not typically the bat the Braves go after, but a solid glove that will stick at shortstop. So, again, I don't know how realistic that is, but again, if Swanson's not coming back, you don't believe in Grissom to handle the position defensively, then perhaps you need to go out and find somebody young, controllable, that you could build into being your future shortstop, in the next couple of years and obviously into the future. But the options aren't great beyond Swanson. The Braves may be forced to have to up their offer in order to get him back and lead the shortstop position for the Braves. All right, next, I want to get to some of your comments, talk about a little bit of news that's going on around the league, and we'll talk about that next. Just a couple of signings on Wednesday, nothing major. Noah Syndergaard went to the Dodgers for $13 million. We talked about possibly getting some guys for the back end of the rotation. I know Noah Syndergaard's one player that I mentioned, but even these fifth starters, 1-year deals, they're going for double-digit $1 million. So these are expensive players. Michael Lorenzen, he got $8.5 million with the Tigers, with a chance to earn $10 million in incentives. So players aren't cheap. Even if you're getting, again, fifth starters, those are costing you, $10 million. The Guardians traded Owen Miller to the Brewers. Some people maybe were expecting that maybe that meant that they were willing to trade Willy Adames now, but Owen Miller is not that guy. He's not going to be taking over the shortstop position there. More probably most likely going for their second base job and adding some depth in the infield. But just a little trade taking place. Got a lot of comments here. I apologize. I kind of let these get away, but I'm going to try to go through them real quick. Joe Me says, if 17 per is the highest Alex has gone, the market has blown that out of the water. I think 20 per is bottom dollar, huge discount at this point. 22 per is my ceiling, like Matt and Austin will make. And I think I kind of think that's where I am as well. I think $20 $20 million at $20 would be great. $20 million probably gets it done. And I think 22 definitely gets it done, but 20 is as high as I would really like to go. 18's honestly as high as I would feel comfortable going, but I would maybe go as high as 20 million a year to get it done. Joseph Greenwell says, honestly, I think we should have accepted Dansby's 6-year, $140 million offer and moved Grissom to left field. Certainly with the way the market is, William Fulgham says that too, or he says 6 and 140. I think he will be a Cub. That's where everybody believes he's going right now. Gitster says the way Alex Anthopoulos is talking about Dansby, I think he's gone. That certainly gets, is the sense I think a lot of people are getting right now, which is a bit surprising to me that Alex, again, maybe there's just nothing else out there, but I would have to imagine if he feels pretty confident that Dansby's not coming back, that he's got to have something else in the works. Even if it's not at shortstop, maybe it's in left field. But, but the fact that he hasn't really done that yet, leaves the door open for me a little bit that perhaps there is an opportunity there. Joseph Greenwell also says, if we don't get Dansby, do you think we could get Benintendi for 12 to 15 million a year and offer him 2 to 3 years? At the beginning of this offseason, I would have said, 3 years at $12 to $15 million a year for Benintendi, likely gets it done. But the way this offseason is going, I just have a feeling Benintendi is going to get like 4, maybe 5 years at least $15 million a year. And that's probably too expensive for the Braves or for what I would want to give him. Josh Ghetto says the most surprising thing about the shortstop contracts has been the number of years. I'm wondering if A maybe increases the number of years to 7 or more. If I had to guess, I'd say 7, 155. Yeah, that's something we talked about as well. Do you extend the years on the deal and shorten that AAV? I think that's certainly an option where you could go and perhaps get a deal done, or, create that option year with that high buyout. Could be another possibility. Christopher Shaffey says Braves are going to go with Grissom and Arcia. Wash seems really high on Grissom, and AA believes in Grissom as well. And that's where, is that coach speech, or do they really believe that? And we're not going to know. But what are they going to say about the kid? I mean, I hope that's true. And again, I've been the one all along saying I'm not ready to give up on him defensively, but are 3 sessions with Ron Washington in the offseason all of a sudden going to turn him into an above average defender at shortstop? I kind of not necessarily believing or buying that. Josh Ghetto, I'm glad you mentioned this. I want to bring this up as well. Isn't conventional wisdom that one more for a free agent is worth about $8 million? If so, 24 a year for Dansby doesn't seem so bad. And yeah, that's typically the price for one WAR. And I think it may even be higher than that at $10 million, but it doesn't always translate to when you're signing a player for a contract. But that is typically how Fangraphs, I believe it is, equates money tied to WAR. It's me says, just let him walk. I'm tired of hearing about it. And I apologize. We're probably going to talk about it almost every day here until something gets done. Says Saylock, if Dansby made $10 million last year, Braves could go $20 million using Duvall and some of Jansen's $16 million salaries. Of course, giving Morton 20 didn't help. If 6 years, 120 isn't enough, then okay. Yeah, I kind of Gary Lay also says I'd go 6, 120, and that's it. I think that's probably max, and that's the deal that Dansby apparently or reportedly offered, and the Braves balked at. And Alex Anthopoulos he's great. And you can call him stubborn, you can call him whatever he wants, but he typically does not go beyond, what he feels comfortable doing. Like I said, the only time he's done that is Marcell Ozuna, and that's in the back of his mind in all of these free agent contracts now. Sports Live in the ATL says players are greedy, period. This is their livelihood. They have earned this opportunity to make this money. Again, it's easy for me to say, I'd take $100 million to play in Atlanta, but if another team's offering you $150 million to come play for them, are you really going to turn down $50 million? Is that being greedy? Again, I think if the difference is 10, 15 million, I think Dansby would turn that down to stay in Atlanta. And that's a lot of money to turn down. So I don't believe these players are greedy. I think they earn this opportunity. The teams make all this money, and they should be able to profit from it. If we can't get Benintendi, this from Davis Gorman, if we can't get Benintendi, Brantley, or Martinez for left field, would you choose Will Myers, Conforto, Pollock, or Peralta? I would go with Conforto out of that group. I do like Will Myers. I like Peralta as well as right-handed bats who have some good splits. But I just like Conforto's game. I worry about him not playing last year and what he looks like coming back. But I do like his game, his on-base ability. Joseph Recap, I wasn't a fan of the Contreras trade to the Brewers until realizing we got the best catcher from the Athletics. So here's somebody else kind of coming around on the Sean Murphy trade. Kyle Oka says, no more shift. Pitchers adapting to pitch clock means top-tier defense at shortstop is worth everything in the coming season. I think that's a great point. And again, if you're paying Dansby $18, $20 million a year, you're paying him and hoping that he's going to be a Gold Glove defender, for the next 4 or 5 years or the length of that contract. And I think that's worth that amount you're paying him, even if he does step back defensively. Hines says, some people really like David Peralta for our left field, but I think he's probably washed. What about you? I do. And for years, I really wanted David Peralta for the Braves. I thought he was a really good, left-handed hitter, but I do think he's a little bit past his prime at this point. I don't think he does much for the Braves. It says Leonard Littlejohn says $21 million for 6 years. Put it on the table and then on a short timeline by 12/31. So you're doing what Freddie Freeman's agents did and giving him an ultimatum and a deadline to make a decision. I don't know that they'll do that, but I do think they try to wrap this thing up in the next week. I'd be a little surprised if we don't have a decision by the middle of next week before Christmas weekend. Gianna Friendly says, why risk the step back? You know what Dansby Swansby Danson can do. Like to play on words there, but it is a risk. And look, you see my Twitter handle, Shortstop Ball. I believe the shortstop position is one of the most important, if not the most important position on the field. I want Dansby back because of the known. You know what you're getting with him. You know the type of competitor he is. But Alex Anthopoulos has to run a business, and he has to think about the future of this club as well. And he's not going to go beyond what he thinks Dansby Swanson is worth. And what I think he's worth, and what most people think he's worth, is around $18 million a year. But in free agency, sometimes you got to overpay to get a player. And that's why it's so risky when these guys get to free agency. And that's why it's so important that Alex has locked up so many of these guys. Because when you get to free agency, you get in a bidding war, and there are teams who need these players to compete and win. Then you're going to have somebody overpay. And that's what free agency is. It's teams overpaying to get the player that they want in order to hopefully win a championship. And Alex Anthopoulos, for the most part, is not going to get caught up in doing that. All right, sorry, I know there's a lot in here to get to that I'm going to miss, but we are kind of running long here. I appreciate all the comments. If I didn't get to your question, please make sure you put it in the comment section below. Let's see if I get one more question in here. I'm gonna another one from Josh Ghetto. Some good comments from Josh tonight. Jordan Westberg could be an option for a shortstop prospect to his blog. I looked at him as well. I think that would also be another good name along with the ones that I mentioned that you could look at if you were going to trade for a prospect to bring in to kind of groom or become that shortstop of the future. I think Jordan Westberg is another good name out there. We really didn't talk about the Max Fried. So we kind of touched on Max Fried yesterday. I think he's gone after 2 years, but I don't think the Braves are trading him. I think you just enjoy him for the next 2 years is what he is. And then he's going to go to free agency and get one of these ridiculously overpriced deals. Unfortunately, I don't think the Braves are going to be signing him. And I don't think they're going to get one of those extensions. I think he's going to free agency. To me, that's been kind of clear for a while at this point. And then Joe Me, we're going to leave it out with a a banger, a hot take here. He says Vaughn Grissom better than Jeremy Pena. Now, interesting enough, Jeremy Pena, I believe, is 3 years older than Vaughn Grissom. So I hope he's on kind of that same path. But again, Jeremy Pena was 24 years old this year coming in for the Astros. Vaughn Grissom was 21. If you think Vaughn Grissom's the future at shortstop, and maybe you do, and maybe the Braves do, and I hope so. I really, really do. But if that's the case, the best they can do for his development and to making him that is to sending him back to the minors to continue to get better defensively and to make the adjustments. Look, pitchers adjusted to Vaughn Grissom late in the year, and he struggled. So he could also use some time back in the minors to continue to work on his bat as well and making those adjustments. But most importantly, continuing to work on the things that he's learned from Ron Washington this offseason, what he learned from Dansby Swanson at the big league level last year. I just think if Grissom is your future at shortstop, I think he may not be the future necessarily in 2023, maybe mid-2023, but I just think he would really benefit from that time at the minors to continue to develop there. All right, appreciate all the comments. Appreciate everybody joining tonight. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at @LockedOn_Braves. Follow me at Shortstop Ball. Go make your second listen of the day, the Locked On Sports Today podcast, where they talk about the biggest stories from every day. Again, thanks for listening. Follow me on Twitter at Shortstop Ball. Make sure you subscribe to the Locked On Braves on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast, wherever you get your podcast, and we will talk to you next time.